so that, your team can look at it as needed. All right, so you're the IT person, correct? Okay, and so do you get into like the weeds of accounting, or are you kind of a little bit of everything person, or what is your role exactly?
So with the current stage, to be honest, I just um create users and I troubleshoot when
Things are not working.
yeah, but to
Okay.
be fair, I don't I mean I just we we all are kind of curious of how does it look, how different does it look from right now to
Okay.
see how bad it will be to adjust to it.
Yeah, well, it's going to be disruptive. That's a given. Unfortunately, that's just life, right? But
Right.
so what I'm going to do is what I planned on doing is I do know Sage 50. I'm not certified in it, but I have a handful of smaller clients using it. So I know how to get around in Sage 50 US, which used to be Peachtree.
Right.
So Sage 50 US used to be Peachtree, Sage 300 used to be ACPAC for Windows. So
Uh,
the point in all that is that Sage, their business model has been to purchase software that they think is promising,
mhm.
and then, run it. So their whole thing is different levels and different flavors of accounting software. So they purchased Peachtree, and they purchased ACPAC, and they purchased the Mass products, which became Sage 100,
Okay.
and so on. So they purchased Timberline, which is for construction and real estate. All those products were developed by completely independent companies, without a thought of one day we are all going to be under the same umbrella. Okay,
Mhm.
so that creates some confusion for people who think, well, Sage 50 is going to be real similar to Sage 300, which might be real similar to Sage 100, and so on, and it's not really the case.
Okay.
A few years ago, they changed the naming convention so that it was no longer Peachtree, and I kind of wish they hadn't, because now people have expectations that it's going to be a
Mhm.
lot the same, and it's not.
Right.
So what I thought I would do for you guys is, since I do know both products, is to talk about some of the distinguishing features between the products. And like anything, there might be some things that if you go with Sage 300, you might say, well, I really like the way Sage 50 did this. But, and then there's going to be other things, hopefully more things that you're going to say, this is a better fit for us if you go this route.
Okay.
But yeah, the expectation that it's going to be similar is not realistic. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's like, managing expectations is the first step of the game. So,
Mhm.
what Sage 50 is designed for is the mid-market, which would have at least one full-time individual in the accounting department. It's more scalable than Sage 50, which is an excellent entry level product. But once you grow and you're more in that mid market arena, you're going to have some requirements that Sage 50 simply doesn't offer, because it's just not that level of product. It's excellent for what it does, but like anything, there are limits.
Right.
So Sage 50, where it shines is really reporting, in my opinion, the ability to slice and dice your data in different ways. Another thing that's very different from Sage 50 is that Sage 300 is based on a batch processing module. So what that means is that you enter your transactions into a batch, and then you post them, and those items can be edited up until the time you post them. So unlike Sage 50, you can't go in and edit a posted transaction, and that's because of Audit Trail.
Mhm.
So it's annoying if you're used to being able to go in and erase a transaction and that kind of thing, but it does have benefits. Like I had a client using Sage 50, and I used to come in and do their bank rec and their month end years ago, and I couldn't figure out why their bank rec wasn't working. And it turned out someone had erased a transaction because of a bounced client check. So, I spent 3 hours looking for that, and it was
Mhm.
like, so the advantage of not being able to erase and change is that, you do get that audit trail. The disadvantage is that you have to make a journal entry to fix maybe a misposted expense or something like that. The other thing is Sage 300. I mean, they're all modular in that you've got ARAPGL, Bank Rec, they're all separate modules, but Sage 300 might feel a little more modular than Sage 50. So, you enter something in AP and then you post it, it flows out to the Bank Rec, it flows out to the general ledger. The modules send transactions to the general ledger, but the general ledger doesn't send things back to the modules. So anything, for example, that impacts the bank rec needs to be entered in either APAR or bank rec, to keep your GL in sync with the balance in your bank, your bank rec. So those are some things that are a little different, and those are some of the adjustments people have to make. And I like to try to let them know so they're not like, why the heck is it like this? It's just because
Right.
that's the architecture. Sage 300 is built on SQL Server.
Okay.
So that's going to be more robust than I think Sage 50 comes with, like built-in pervasive, if my memory serves. And that's a
Yeah.
great little database engine up to a point, and then you're going to start having performance hits and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, like I cannot for Sage right now, the Sage 50, I can't access the raw data.
Yep,
So, and it's
yep.
because they're saving this kind of file format thing. Yeah. It's
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of more proprietary. So,
Mhm.
in Sage 300, you can look at data right in SQL Management Studio, or you can point Crystal Reports to it. And
Right.
we have data dictionaries that we can provide you with so you'll know what these tables actually refer to. Sage 300 also comes with Sage Intelligence, which I know is also included in Sage 50. But again, you've got more tables and that kind of thing. I've done a lot with that reporting tool, so I can help you guys get up to speed on that.
Right.
So this is a Sage 50 or Sage 300 desktop.
Okay.
And you can see, you'll see only the modules that you own and that have been activated for the company in question. So if
Okay.
you click on Open Company, you can have as many. You can see I've got a bunch of data sets here.
Mhm.
So you can have multiple companies. I think you only said you had one. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
Well, depending on what we do, we might have two, three, four,
Okay.
maybe four. So,
Okay, that's fine. What you buy with Sage 50 or Sage 300 are user licenses, which I think we talked about.
yep.
And that once you have one user license, you can have as many companies as you need. I've got one client that they're real estate and they've got like 55 LLCs. It's kind of horrendous, but the point is you don't have to buy anything to add additional databases, which is the same as Sage 50.
Right.
You can have as many data sets as you need. So here on the left, so this is the Sage 300 desktop. Here on the left, you'll see all the activated databases that you have. Um, and so you as the IT person are going to be probably interested in user authorization, administrative services. This
Right.
is where you create users. You can define security groups for each module, okay?
Okay.
And that group can you can pick and choose what functions any user or user author security group has access to. So you might say, well, there's some people that just need to do reporting, or maybe they do AP, but we don't want them in the GL or
Mhm.
whatever. So you can set that up very specifically. And these are all the functions. And you can have as many security groups as you need for each module. Okay.
Okay.
Once you define your security groups, then and you add your users, of course, then you tell the system what user can do what. Okay.
Okay.
In this sample data, I don't think I have any users other than the admin, but I would assign, like, AP gets entry rights only, or maybe GL is reporting only, or whatever combination you need for any person. And you can see the rights are assigned by the module, by the program. Okay. So that's kind of a set it and forget it. You really don't need to do much with that unless you get a new user or someone leaves or something like that.
Okay.
The customization directories, what that does is it defines certain custom forms that you have. And the advantage of that is that, so custom forms might be your AR invoice form, your order entry invoice form, your AP check form. And as you know, most you may have a pretty standardized check, but your printer pulls it in a certain way, and we might need to tweak it in Crystal reports, and then you save that customization in your custom folder. And that way, when you upgrade, you just update the folder name, and then you're done. So that makes things kind of easy. Data activation, that's where we turn on certain modules in a company. So when we first start, of course, we would activate GLA or AP, whatever you purchase, payroll, whatever.
Mhm.
And then, of course, when we do upgrades, we install the program, then we activate that new version and data activation. Okay.
Okay.
Um, oh, I think I'm going to sneeze. Data integrity is where you can check your data tables for certain frequent errors. It's not going to check every possible thing that could happen, because otherwise you'd be there all day, waiting, to get your report. But it does pick up things like if there's an orphan record or something went wrong during posting. Doesn't happen often, but sometimes things do happen. So data integrity is a good thing to do kind of regularly, just to make sure you're on top of things.
Okay.
Um, Restart maintenance if you're in the middle of posting in Sage or importing a batch of something, and whatever that process is, if it doesn't complete, Sage is going to bookmark it, and it'll say, well, here's where we left off. And you got to fix the situation, and then you can finish the posting or the import or whatever. That's a nice improvement over the old DOS program, where if you had like a power outage during the middle of posting, your data was trashed and you had to restore. This time, restart maintenance now, just kind of mostly, and I say mostly because nothing's 100%, but
Mm.
it
Okay.
usually handles things. Data
Okay.
dump and load. So this would take a snapshot of your data at this time, and allow you to load it into another data set. So what you would use, so when I do an upgrade, I always dump the data,
Mhm.
as a backup. And then you can also use that if you create something like Amcor test for training purposes or
Mm.
something like that. You would just dump Amcor, load it into the test, and you could do that anytime so that your test data is kind of current.
Okay.
And then you would just do that with load. Administrative reports are just your user authorization and activity. It's kind of top level. The user authorization is going to tell you what user has access to what security group and what module. User activity, it's not going to get into the super deep weeds of what they're doing, but it gives you an idea, of what's going on. Sorry about my dogs. So that's administrative services, something you don't have to really get into too often. Um, Common services is where things that are going to be common to more than one thing in Sage reside. So, for example, your company profile is here. So, of course, it's going to be your company name, your tax ID, your options. And for example, in this sample data, the functional currency is Canadian dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And the you have different kinds of rate types, and usually people use daily spot rate, and they can
Right.
load that into the multi-currency chart. And then, how do you want to handle it? Let me close my door because they're mouthy. I've got people painting my deck, so my dogs are rather like to comment on that. Anyway, so that's how that works. Notice this checkbox, which is dimmed, is multi-currency. So that's where you turn on in a specific database that this is a multi-currency database, meaning I have transactions that I'm receiving in currency other than my functional currency. Okay. So
Okay.
you might have a Canadian dollar company that also may receive funds in US dollars, for
Mm-hmm.
example, right?
Okay.
Um, the other option is if you have a Canadian company and it's only receiving things in Canadian dollars, then it's still a single currency database. So that's the difference. And then I'll show you where you can
Yeah.
load your rates, because I
I'm
know that was a
curious.
question.
Yeah, I'm. Hopefully you get there because I'm curious about how this behaves. For example, because it's always going to be U.S. and the other currency because we're in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, so there's usually always a U.S. account and then the native currency. For example, we have Mexico like that. Um, and the system we're using right now, the customer, if they pay us in US and we set the customer to be Mexican dollars, we cannot use that customer. We will have to create a second customer, have one customer each with the currency. So one customer, the
Okay.
same customer, one with the pesos and one with the US dollars.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm curious to see if it's the same here or if it's a little different.
Just writing that down. Now, full disclosure, I don't get much multi-currency because I'm in Baltimore, so
Okay.
kind of right in the middle of the Mid-Atlantic area. So some of your questions I may have to bounce off a colleague. But anyway, I should be able to, um, answer most of them. So anyway, you define your functional currency, which is this company's home currency. Um, and then you tell it whether it is going to be multi-currency and what rate type you're going to use.
Okay.
And then this page here is where you set up your email. If you want to email statements and invoices and things like that to customers or order confirmations or anything like that, you set that up here. So you would handle that as the
Okay.
IT person. And you set it and forget it. Once it's set up, unless your domain or your port or something changes, then you don't really
Mhm.
have to do anything here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The next thing, which is under common services, of course, is your fiscal calendar.
Okay.
And, that's just, are you calendar or fiscal year?
I think it's this fiscal year. Um,
Okay.
Well, we always go from January to, well, the owner likes to leave 2 years open. So,
That's fine.
because of
That's
taxes, once he, for example, this year, he like archived 2023, but 2024 is technically there. He
Yep.
hasn't archived it yet. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so Sage 300, you can have as many years as you want.
Okay.
Okay, so it like Sage 50, I think it is only like the current and maybe two prior or something like that that you can actually run. So you don't need to back up and archive things. The only time you really need to do that is if you find after a number of years that you've got a lot of old data and, it's
Mhm.
bogging things down and that kind of thing. You might make a snapshot using the data dump and load of your existing company and then maybe purge out some history. I'm talking to a client right now who's got a lot of inventory that they haven't used in 15 years. And of course, God knows it's getting slow.
Mhm.
And so, we've suggested making a backup and doing that clear of historical data just to, make the list a little bit less onerous. So what I mean by fiscal year is, do you start in January or do you start in July? And that can accommodate all that.
Okay.
So in Sage 300, you have 12 regular fiscal periods. You've got
Mhm.
an you can have 13 if you need it. You then have an adjustment period, and then you've got the closing period. And the closing period happens under the hood. That's considered period 15. When you open and create your new year, 2026, for example, what it's going to do is it's going to do a closing entry to retained earnings, and that will happen in the closing period. And then, of course, if you do any prior period entries, it'll post that entry as well as do the under the hood closing period to adjust your opening retained earnings. So Sage 300, like I said, is multi-year and you can have as many years as you want. Um,
And then,
as
sorry.
go
Um,
ahead.
the because right now Sage 50, even though we lock it, quote unquote, people can still go and update transactions. So
Okay.
I'm
So
assuming
once,
how
yep.
you, sorry. Hmm.
Yep, sorry. Yes, so you so this sample data is 2019 and 2020, okay? That's when the
Okay.
data set is. So once I finish 2019, I can just double click here, lock it down. I can make the year inactive. I can lock the adjustment and lock the closing period. And then what you would do is in your user authorizations, you could have someone who doesn't have access to the fiscal calendar. And then you would say, well, only these people have the access. So once it's locked, if you need to go and say make an entry into general ledger, you just double click on this X, save it, you make your entry, post it. You would need to unlock your closing period because it would create a closing entry. And then you would come back in and relock it. And so you have a little better control, I
Mhm.
think, on that. Okay.
Okay.
Yep, I'm not going to save my changes. Oh, and by the way, the locking hat can be done by modules. So, like for instance, once you finish June, you can say APAR are locked. I'm still working on GL, so I'm going to leave that unlocked. And I haven't gotten my bank rec done, so I'm going to leave that unlocked. And then
Mhm.
once you finish, you can lock those two modules. So you can lock it by module and by period. Scheduling again, common services, because you can use the schedules in either APAR or general ledger. So for in this example, we've got a monthly schedule on the first of the month. So what is my recurring period? It could be daily, weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, yearly. how frequent, every 1 month, or maybe it's quarterly, so every 3 months. And then on that day, what day of the month do I want it on? The first, any day of the month, or the last? So once you create your schedules, then you can attach that schedule to either a recurring payable transaction or a recurring receivable transaction, or a general ledger recurring entry like depreciation or something like that.
Okay.
So that, again, it's in common services because it can serve multiple modules. Bank services is in common services, once again, because it receives transactions from AP and AR and payroll, and also bank entries like for service charges or interest or something like that. So in common services, you set up your banks. And then once you set up your banks, you can utilize these in AP and AR, or payroll. You can have as many banks as you want. And then in bank transaction, you've got reconcile statements, you've got bank transfers, so that would be between two banks inside of common services. Reconcile e-statements, you can link up to your bank and then it'll pull down the transactions from the bank and then you can reconcile them in Sage. So that's pretty convenient. I think Sage 50 might have something like that, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah, I think I've seen them. It's like a list that they check. That's all I really know. So it has some kind of bank
Yes. So,
reconciliation. Yeah.
yeah, so the bank rec, let me pull up my data actually here. So this is on my hosted server. I'm going to pull up my own company data so that, because I had the E thing set up. I'm going to pull that up. Anyway, so in my common services and my bank rec, let me go to banks. Here we go. So I can reconcile statements. So that's kind of like what you see in Sage 50. Okay, you put in the date, you put in the reconciliation date and the statement balance, and then your reconciliation. You can see here are all my transactions that have come from wherever. And then here are my little X's to indicate that these items have cleared. Now, the other thing, what I'm talking about with the E statements, I've actually linked this to my own bank. So I'm going to say, 08/31 is my reconciliation date. And I'm going to hit get transactions. Hopefully it's going to, yeah. So it's bringing these down from my bank. Okay.
Oh, okay.
See, and then you can
Um,
just say, okay, I'm going to double click on that. Like here's one, and I'm clearing it, and I'm clearing it, and I'm clearing it. So I'm not even looking at a bank statement, but I've just cleared a transaction. So that's pretty helpful.
that's nice.
Once they get, yeah, up and running, you just have to connect to your bank and, go from there. So anyway, I'll show you briefly what that looks like. So if we just choose a bank, any bank will do, connect bank feed, it's going to pull up a browser. You're going to put in your email, and this is for Sage, and then you'll hit next, and then you choose your bank from a list. And if it's like got some frequently used banks, and then if it's not on there, you use another button. And anyway, most of them show up. And then you put in your login and so on, and then that'll turn on your bank feeds so you can do that reconciliation. That's pretty helpful.
Okay, and
Um,
then
mhm.
from pulling the transactions on the bank, um, I'm just thinking. So let's say that they pay an invoice. Will they be able to like cross each other out? So I can put that this invoice in fact did like got
Yes.
out in the bank because I
So
can go to the e-statements. Mhm.
Right. So what's going to happen in accounts payable? You record payments in a couple different ways. So first, I always use the batch list and GLA or an AP because it shows me all my batches. I can create a new batch. I can edit one if it's not posted and so on. So the first way to get an accounts payable transaction in is just record the invoice when you get it.
Mhm.
So that's just an invoice or credit note or whatever. And then you record that item as being paid. You can either pick and choose one at a time, or you can choose create a payment batch, and you can say pay all transactions due on or before a certain date, and it'll generate a check batch for you. Then you can approve that check batch, make sure you actually do want to print those checks, and then you can print the checks, and then once you post them, it will update the vendor invoice as having been paid. It'll also send that check to the bank rec. If you guys end up going with EFT, there's what you would do is you would tell the system that your payment code, for example, let's pull that up. So you can have different payment codes here. So cash or check, Canadian, whatever. So if I go EFT, um, what I would do is I would say this vendor is an EFT vendor, and then you would go into the Orchid EFT and generate that payment batch. And then it would create that file that you would upload to your bank. And then it would pay your vendors. The other nice thing about it is it would create an email. And I can show you an example because I have a couple clients that do this. And I love it because I don't have to go to the bank. So,
Right. So,
right.
is will this be um this is not quite the posting of the payment. I'm just sending it to my vendor that I pay you. Yes?
Well, yeah, so it does both things. So here's the email. Here's a sample. One of my clients sent me a check, it tells the date and whatnot. And that way I know, here comes a payment and here's what it's paying, which is super helpful. So what'll happen is you'll enter the invoice as a payable, and then you'll generate either a batch of checks that would be physical printed checks
Mhm.
and print them out and post them, and that's going to send those posted items to the bank rec, right, automatically. Or you're going to generate an EFT batch, electronic funds transfer batch, using Orchid EFT, and that will generate a notcha file that you can
Okay.
upload to your bank. And it'll also, you use that product to generate the emails to send everyone in that check batch notification that you've got it
Of the remittance.
paid. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what I just showed you, was with a remittance.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, you could certainly, just log on and pay online manually using your bank, but you're not going to, the vendor's not going to get that email.
Mhm.
And as a vendor who have gotten payments, like I've gotten payments from clients and it simply said payment from operating account. And I'm like, okay, and who paid me? And I have no clue.
Right.
So this way I know, oh, it was, Amcor or whoever,
Mhm.
doing all that. So that's how that works. So, I'm not sure how you're doing it now, if you just enter a payment or an AP
Okay.
invoice and send the check all at once, or if you enter the invoices as you get them and then do a weekly check run. I mean, we can do it either
So,
way.
I mean, we're trying to do the Nasha for sure.
Yep,
But sadly, right now with Sage 50, they had to go directly to the bank and
yep,
pay each vendor individually. Um, Plus go to Sage and so
enter
like
it
that they
in.
paid. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, so it's, manual. Hopefully you don't make a mistake and
Mhm.
you're entering the same thing twice. The vendor gets a
Mhm.
payment, which is fabulous, but which invoices did it pay? Who
Mhm.
knows? So that's the nice thing about the electronic funds transfer. It's all done inside Sage. It sits in the Sage desktop, which is what we're looking at here. I don't know if I've got it installed. That's what I'm actually looking
I,
for.
I was gonna ask because I think we read that this Sage 300 was like a web base, but you seem to have an application actually installed.
Yes, I do. There are web screens available that you can install. I personally don't use them because when you're entering data, having to grab the mouse for every line or of transaction is really not real efficient. So I find the desktop version to
Okay.
be, better for just cranking out lines of data, like my billing or whatever. So yeah, there are web screens which you can use. And here, by the way, I did find EFT processing on this sample data here. So here it is. So once again, you can see it's just sitting on your Sage desktop. It's not, um, some
Right.
external thing, EFT transactions, create EFT file, payroll EFT file. You don't really need because Sage 300 payroll does come with direct deposit capability.
Okay.
And then, yeah, transaction reports, all that kind of thing. So, yeah, you do that just inside the product, which is nice. You're not jumping all over. Yeah, so Sage 300, what you're looking at here is actually on our hosted server.
Okay.
What you're looking at here is on my laptop. So it's like which sample data do I use depends on, what you want to see, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So yeah, so it is an application that you would install on the desktop unless you use a remote desktop setup
Right.
where you install the application. You would have a SQL server and then you would have an app server. I like that option, whether it's hosted with us or whether it's something you guys set up, because then the deployment's easier. If you get a payroll update, you don't have to run around and install it on 10 workstation. You've just got one. It makes your life easier, basically.
Right.
So I think that's a big plus. But yes, it is an application that you like, it's not, I don't know why they call it Sage 300 Cloud. It makes it really confusing, but the point of that is there are cloud connected services that can connect to Sage. So if you guys had the need to have reporting that was way more robust than what comes with the system. Um, and that's usually for really large organizations that are more on enterprise level reporting tools. There are tools that can connect down to your Sage 300. So that's a cloud connected service. If you guys wanted Sage Inventory Advisor, that's another program that beefs up your inventory management. That's a cloud connected service, and it's like reading from wherever your Sage 300 is deployed, so yeah, it just
Okay.
depends on, yeah, how you want to deploy it. So I know,
Um.
yeah, what
Mhm.
else? What else?
Will you mind showing me if, for example, we enter a purchase order and then we want to convert it to an invoice? How would that look like?
Okay,
Or if it's,
so
yeah.
So a purchase order, are you talking about purchase of inventory or other things by your company from a vendor?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to scroll down to purchase orders here. We're going to go to PO transactions.
Okay.
So these are all the transactions available in purchase orders. You've got requisition, which would be kind of a pre-purchase order,
Right.
which, you don't have to use that if you don't need it. But if you do need it, you can.
Mhm.
And then you convert that to a purchase order, or you can just enter the purchase order directly.
Okay.
So you would key in your vendor, okay? And the purchase order date is whatever it is. And then if you're ordering inventory, A11030, what location is it coming to?
Oh, that's nice.
How,
Mhm.
yeah, how many of these things am I ordering? My unit cost is based on the last or most recent cost, but if it changes, it's now $19. You can put that in. Let me maximize my screen. Let's see what else. So unit cost, extended cost, unit weight. If you need that, you can track that. You can, way over here is comments and instructions. You click and add a comment or an instruction.
Okay.
The difference between comments and instructions is you can set it up so maybe the comment goes to your vendor, but the instruction is more for your warehouse or something like that, and it's based on like what you put on your documents. Okay.
Okay.
And that's, you don't have to use it. If this item in inventory, if you know your vendor's item number for this thing, you can actually set that up in inventory control and it'll remember it and it'll bring it up here, or you can just put it in whatever it is.
Okay.
You can put in the expected arrival date, and there it is. So that looks great, and I'm going to post that. Here's what the PO looks like. And again, you can set that up to email to your vendor, and I don't want it to go. Hang on, let me change my print destination here. I don't want it to go to my printer because you're not going to be able to do that,
Right.
obviously. So this is where you would change where your print destination goes, right?
Right.
So once again, I'm going to print this guy out. And this is just the default. You can customize this if you need. So it just shows quantity ordered, vendor item number,
Okay.
etc. Yeah, and this is a crystal report, so you
Yes.
can edit it as you need. And then that looks great. So it's gone to the vendor. Perfect. So then the next thing, let me look at what PO number that was. So that's PO 30. So then, like a few days later, I'm going to receive my items. So I'm going to do that. So again, it's vendor number 1200. I can either use the finder or just type in the PO number. Either way
Okay.
works. And then it shows here's what we got here. I'm going to receive 5. And I'm going to post it.
Okay.
And so now we've received something, okay?
Mhm.
You can't enter a vendor invoice for a PO unless the items are received, which kind of makes logical sense. You're not going to,
Yeah.
unless you're doing a prepayment, which you can do if you want. But yes, this is just showing, it's been received. And then once I've done that, maybe your warehouse or your inventory people have done this receipt, and then your accounting person is like, okay, I've got this invoice here for this vendor. So whatever it is, put in my vendor ID, and then I'm going to use my receipt number, whatever it is, this one here. And here are my 5 items at $19 for $95. I'm going to post. There it is. There's my invoice. So that's all done in purchase orders. And then in
Okay.
inventory, there's a process called day-in processing under periodic processing. What that does is it gathers all PO transactions and all inventory transactions and all order entry transactions for sales orders, and gathers them up and sends them to where they need to go. The reason this doesn't happen every time you post is because that would delay. You need to have to wait for it to create an AP invoice and all that kind of thing. So this makes it a little faster for your users. So we just go day in processing, process, and you can do this as many times as you want during the day, or once a week, or whatever's appropriate for your transaction volume. Now, if I go into accounts payable, AP batch list, let me refresh it. And there is my PO generated batch, and it's ready to post. And here it is. There it is, $95. AP clearing. So transaction flow for inventory, purchase orders, and order entry. So purchase orders, you create a requisition or a PO. There's no accounting there, no debits, no credits. Nothing has been received, nothing has been invoiced. However, it does update the quantity on purchase order in your inventory. So you can say, oh, I'm low, but I got a PO outstanding, and you can kind of track your inventory that way. Once you receive items, what it does is it debits inventory and it credits something called AP clearing. AP clearing holds amounts that are received but not invoiced. So, that might happen all at the same time. So it just washes through. But, on the other hand, maybe you receive goods and get your invoice 5 days later. If that crosses a month, you might have a balance for that in AP clearing. So that keeps things clean, and you can kind of track, oh, these are received but not purchased or not invoiced, and so on.
Okay.
So
I had a
that is,
question
yeah,
about receiving. So if the PO, which you did mention it, if the PO doesn't get received, I cannot invoice it. So
correct.
we
Yep.
have to, well, the PO module already has the receiving portion of it, right?
That's correct. So
Okay.
you can do it all at once. So they split these features out in case you've got, separation of duties based on what they're doing. So if you've got someone in the warehouse who's receiving, but they're not entering the AP invoices, that allows them to do that.
Okay.
Once you receive, you can also click on the invoice button, which is here. See that little button here. And then you can say, oh, I'm receiving, but I also have the invoice. I can do both at once. So you can
Okay.
either do them separately or you can do them both at once. It just depends on, what actually has happened. So anyway, yeah, you can do them both at once or not. Same
Okay.
goes for order entry. So when you enter a sales order, again, no accounting happens. It's just showing that customer A has ordered these items.
Right.
And then when you ship them, just like purchase orders, it's the same exact accounting flow. You can't invoice until you ship, which kind of makes some sense, right? So what happens is it credits inventory and debits something called shipment clearing, which is again where amounts that have been shipped but not yet invoiced to the customer. So just like purchase orders in your shipment entry, maybe the person who's recording the shipment might also be creating the invoice. So as soon as you have a shipment, you can see that it's dimmed, but create invoice is checked, and then you can do all of it at once. So again, it just depends, what you're doing. Um, and if you've got different people doing different things, or if it's
Right.
all happening at once, it's flexible. You can do
Okay.
it. Yeah, whatever makes sense.
Gotcha.
I know this is super high level. What else? What else do you want to see? Um,
Um.
well, let me
I,
show you the multi-currency rate tables. So that
okay. Yeah.
again, yeah, so that's in common services under currency. So, all the currency codes are available. Okay, here they all are. Yeah, it just
Mhm.
comes with the program. Okay. And then you've got your currency rate types. Most people that I've dealt with deal with a daily spot rate.
Yes.
Okay. And these are just your rate types. And then here's where it gets, more interesting. So,
That's the
this
one
is
you
your,
enter every day.
yeah, that's what you would enter. Now, there is an external program that can pull them in for you, so you don't have to do this every day.
Okay.
So exactly. So you've got your whatever your functional currency is. So in this company, sample company, the functional currency is Canadian dollars. So that's what that's your company. It's what your currency is based on where you are.
Okay.
So from Canadian dollars to US dollars, what is my rate type? So you can see we've got some history in here.
Mhm.
Well, this is Australian dollars, but you can see the rate date was this, and then we've got another rate date. So if it's real fluctuating, you might be doing this more often. Um, so then you've got your functional currency, which is what your currency, what Amcor's currency is, and then your source currency might not be the same thing. So if you've got a customer that deals, and I have to get an answer for you if you can have, let me just see. So if we have a customer that is one currency, but sometimes they're another, that's a question. So let's just see how that works. Because honestly, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Um, Let's see. Yeah, okay. So there's the currency, US
Mhm.
dollars for 1100, and there's the spot rate for that one in this Canadian dollars company. So let's see what happens if we do an AR transaction for that. So, all right, test multi-currency, 1100, customer, whoops. Do that. Well, here's what I almost did. I'm going to show you what that almost was.
What you were
I
gonna
hit the,
create.
yeah, so this is where you would create a customer on the fly. Okay. So now you know how to do that. Same thing with vendors. So, all right. So invoice, let's see. All right. Um, I'm just going to do a summary invoice instead of an item so I can just
Mhm.
hit it. Right. So let's just see. All right, so it wouldn't be in taxes, wouldn't be in terms. Here we go. Yeah, it looks like you would still have to have the multi-current customer problem with that situation because you can
Okay.
see the currency field is dimmed.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the rates show up, so, and that's reading from the table. Yeah, so that doesn't change, unfortunately. So yeah, you'll either manually maintain that rate table or one of our third-party developers who used to be a programmer at Sage, so he kind of knows what he's doing, is he has built a program that does the pulling in of the rates for you. So that's kind of a lot of people who are multi-currency use that.
Mhm.
Um, and then your reports, pretty standard, age trial balance. So, your basic AR trial balance,
Okay.
30, 60, 90.
So you
You can
also have reports per module. Okay.
correct, absolutely. Yeah. So here's, an example of an aging. It looks like every other aging probably on the planet. So, um, But what is nice and what I want to point out um, is that this cutoff date. So when you're comparing it to the GL, you're going to go back in time most likely because you're in the middle of August and you're looking at July to make sure the GL ties. So you're going to want to use the posting date or the year period. So the document date is the document date of the invoice or whatever. The posting date is the GL date. Usually it's the same, but it doesn't have to be the same. You might have some, for AP is a better example, you might have an invoice that you receive like the 20th of August, you've already locked July. You want the document to show, the July date, but you want the GL to receive it in August. That's why you can have the two. So
Okay.
when you're comparing to the GL, you always want to make sure you're using the GL date or the year period, which by the way is the same thing.
Mhm.
Okay. Notice here print amounts in either customer currency or functional currency. So customer
Ah,
currency is what it is. Functional currency is Amcor's for currency based on your
nice.
location. Yeah, so that's handy. And
Honestly.
all the reports do that. So the vendor's functional currency or source currency. So the source is where did this transaction originate? Or what was it in? It was in Mexico pesos. Okay, but my functional currency is US dollars. So when you're dealing with multi-currency, you just have to kind of know that
Mhm.
because if you're looking at the raw data tables and the GL post table is going to have two lines for the same
Right.
transaction, one F for functional, the other S for source. Just the other day, I had a client, they couldn't figure out why their retained earnings was doubled on their um, income statement, and that was because they didn't specify the source currency or the functional currency. So it added the two together. So those are just things you need to know when
Right.
you start reporting and diving in. Which brings me to Sage Intelligence. So you may have some familiarity of that with Sage 50 because it does come in Sage 50. With Sage 300, you get two report managers, and I think you get one viewer. I would recommend, based on the question you asked me about the data dictionaries, that you probably are going to want to get the connector,
All
because what
right.
the connector is going to let you do is build custom data containers so that you can get the data that you need in the presentation that you want. And it also allows you to run consolidated statements. So if you're doing a financial statement, you might want to have Amcor location one in one column, location two in the next column, and so on. And then it'll give you a consolidated report, which is kind of handy without having to do a lot of manual nonsense.
Right.
So, your license manager, Sage Intelligence, is licensed based on the workstation ID and the user.
Okay.
So in this, we've got two report manager, one viewer. I've got the connector, and the report designer comes with your subscription. That's for writing financials. You can see the user admin has opened the report manager on this workstation. So the way you can get around that is if you've been writing a report and then you've got someone else who wants to get into report manager and the licenses are all used up, all you have to do is delete the assignment. Doesn't delete the license, it just deletes the link between admin and this workstation
Okay.
and report manager. So that's how you can kind of get around not having to buy a whole lot of report managers. So report manager is where you create, design, edit, and run reports. Report viewer is where you just run them out. So if you have, a lot of users, not everyone's going to need that designing capability, and the
Right.
user and the viewers are cheaper by a lot. So you can just say, all right, I need 4 more viewers rather than, um, so basically I say use the delete license thing unless it becomes onerous, and then you can always add more, just like users get the minimum and then you can always add more.
Right.
Um, so the report designer creates the financial statements. So what happens when you run these reports? Most of these are just the generic ones that come with Sage. But when you run these reports, it drops it into Excel, which is where most people like to
Mhm.
live when they're fooling with accounting.
Yes.
So I ran this out before our demo so we didn't have to wait. So this is an example of a financial statement. This is a template I designed. This is your database ID. You just enter the fiscal period and the fiscal year. If you're using budgeting, you tell Sage 300 has up to 5 budget sets. So you
Okay.
would have your original budget and then your, oh my God, COVID happened. We need to change our budget, but we want to keep the original one. Then so you can have up to 5. I've really never run
Right.
into anyone use more than 2, but it's handy.
Okay.
And so you just tell the system which budget set. These are calculated. So this is just period in text, and then this is the income statement verbiage. And this is a VLOOKUP that creates this. So all this stuff, if you notice, if I hit '06 and I do it as a text field so that that income statement text doesn't give me a hash value.
Mhm.
You can see now it's June, right? So when you run out a financial statement, you put in the year, and it's going to give you all the fiscal periods for that year or years that you ran out. Okay. So you can say, all right, I want to look at June. Well, now I'm going to look at August or whatever. The other nice thing about this is it creates all of your statements on one workbook. So we've got a balance sheet, current period, last period. It could also be last year or 5 years or whatever.
Mhm.
You've got an income statement, pretty standard again. You can do a monthly trend statement, that shows you what am I doing month by month. This is just a chart of accounts, which I dropped in here when I built this thing out. These are your departments. We didn't talk about that yet, but we will. So anyway, what you run it out, and you can see here are the statements or the formulas. So account number is underneath. So I just use the outlining. It's very simple. Once you get the first line written, you can copy it all the way down. And then when you get so the only difference between this formula and that formula is that this formula has a minus because it's a revenue and that formula does not. So they're all the same. So once you get your first statement, if you're doing it using relative references, you can just copy it down and it makes creating statements very fast. So if you look under the hood, so if I hit unhide, you can see there's all these hidden things under here.
Okay.
And that is what is required because these are basically, well, they are sub-reports that are needed to generate financial statements, which are different than just drop my GL transactions into a file kind of thing. Okay. So that's the financial statement. There's something called SI Sage Intelligence Tools that can allow you to set up instructions that will drop this whole workbook into a folder and convert all these formulas to values. Because if I emailed this to you right now and you opened it up from your email, you get hash value because you're not inside Sage Intelligence. So
Gotcha.
so you can also set up scheduling to run reports and then distribute them. That's just using good old Windows scheduler. So, you would just go manage instructions. What do I want to do? Demo, whatever. Just want you to see this. And then your options are email, so to, from, all that. File publish would be save this somewhere on my server, convert to static values so that you don't get those hash values. Or if you've got an FTP where you want to put it up there, you can do that again, converting all things to static values.
Right.
So that's an option on all three tabs. So you just create these instructions, then I'll just say file publish because that's the most common one. So we'll just put it somewhere, stick it in I don't care where I put it, I'll put it here, demo, and that's fine. And now if I select my instructions, all right, demo's the only one I have, so I want that one. What do I want? Well, I don't want this or this. I want that, I want that, and I want that. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to hit send now, and it's going to blink. And now it's just created that file on my desktop, assuming that I can find it, which, is never a given. I don't know where it is. Anyway, yeah, I think maybe this is it. Maybe. Let's see on Excel. Yep, that's it. And you notice now it's no longer formulas. It's just, static values. So once you get all this set up, it's fast. You just, you run it out. Running it out can take a minute because it's generating each of those 12 subreports. If you do multiple years, of course, it's going to be pulling transactions for multiple years. The other thing that's so cool about this is since I'm inside Sage Intelligence still, I can right click and I can go to drill down. See, what is all this? Oh, here's all my accounts. Okay, well, this number looks weird. So let me look at that one. I'm going to drill down. It's going to take me down to the transaction level.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
so it makes your analysis pretty nice,
Yeah, because you don't have to go back to Sage technically to look it up. You
Right,
can just from
exactly.
here look it up.
Yeah,
What's
now once you convert it to static values,
it won't do that.
obviously, right, exactly. But while you're analyzing it, your accounting team can go ahead and, make use of all this. So we've got the drill balance, which is just kind of a trial balance view. So here is, period one, period two, three, four, five, and so on. And here's my total. And then these are what transactions make up this particular line for here. So again, you see home currency, foreign currency. So there are your multi-currencies. So if you've got a database with multi-currency, you're going to need inside your Sage Intelligence formulas, you got to make sure you define that formula, and you just scroll down here. You can see there's other options down here. Somewhere is currency. Hold on. Currency, where are you? Currency code. Okay, so US dollars or currency type source versus functional, whatever. If you have a multi-currency database, you want to make sure you include that. A reporting tree allows you to do departmental um, reporting. Okay, so we didn't talk about that. So let me show you that real quick. So in
Before
the
you look for that, I had a question. I think you mentioned it, but I just want to make sure. The geo codes, they could potentially be different per company, but
mhm.
if you want to do like a global reconciliation, they have to be the same, right?
If you want to have a consolidated statement, you don't have to have them the same, but it'll make your life easier. So if you look at this report here, for example, I always use the outlining. That way I can roll it back, roll it up real easily. You can see this line item, allowance for doubtful accounts, is 1190. If it were 1190 in company A, but if it was 1180 in company B, you're going to have like Amcor 1 in one column, Amcor 2 in another column. So it just makes it more difficult.
Mhm.
If you have an account that exists in Amcor 1 but not in Amcor 2, that's fine. Because what you would do is you would just put that account in here, like say this only existed in Amcor 1. And if this was Amcor 1 and Amcor 2 listed here and here, you would have a 0 in Amcor 2 and like whatever the amount was in Amcor 1. So you can have differences, but if you can get it consistent, that would make your life easier, unless you don't need to do consolidated statements. If that's not something that your people need, then you can do whatever you want. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it just, yeah, if it's consistent as possible. The other problem, if it's, 1189 in this company and 1190 in that one, it might be AR and the one, and you just, yeah, as close as you can get it will make your reporting easier. So we talked about segments. So the general ledger can have up to 10 segments. I've never had anyone have nearly that much, but you can also have up to 45 characters. Again, more than I've ever needed or run into. But in the sample data, for example, you've got account, division, and region. I've got some not-for-profits, and the first segment is always the account number, so like bank services or revenue, whatever. And then the second might be program, like, addiction services or, housing or, something like that would be your division or something like that. And then region. So obviously those examples don't necessarily fit you, but it's very flexible. So um, this example has a 4, 3, and 2 is the length of the segments. It has to be consistent. Once you define this in your GL options, then you've got to define your segment codes because it does validate these. So segment 2 is division. It's 3 characters. Okay, so I could add another one. I could make it 300. I could say, I don't know. I can't think of an example. Something else. Okay, and that's fine. You can also have, you can set it up so each segment closes to a different retained earnings. Again, don't know if you need that, but you can. If you leave this blank, then it's just going to close to your, regular retained earnings. And then here's region. Again, we've got north, south, east, west. And we could just say Midwest or something like that. So that's where you would add your segments. You cannot add a GL code that uses segments to an invalid segment. It forces you to be consistent, which is, I think, a good thing. So once you get that defined, if you look at your chart of accounts, actually, I should show you account structures first. Once you define your account segments, then you define your segment codes and your structures. So account only. So most balance sheets are not departmentalized. It's usually just cash. You don't have one for each segment. Here's another example. Account division just has those 2 segments. And then you've got the regional structure, which has all 3. And you can slice and dice these however you want. The advantage of segments is for reporting. So if you need to see how a specific area of your company is doing versus like a different area of your company or profit a cost center or revenue center, that's when the divisions allow you to do that. Because then you can do a report, an income statement, and just give me for division 100 or show me division 100 in the first column and 200 in the second, and then all of it in the third. So that allows you to really dial into how different areas, business cost centers and revenue centers are doing. Okay. So then once you have all that set up, and then everything, you do the setup first, and then you start adding the data that conforms to that setup. So here is your chart of accounts. You can see these balance sheet accounts. There's three kinds of accounts: balance sheet, retained earnings, and income statement. Obviously the balance sheet is not going to close to zero at year end. The income statement is, and retained earning is the only thing that can receive those entries. So you can see the account structure in the balance sheet is just the account. And then you get into the revenue and expenses, you've got these different structures. And then here we're getting, so here are some retained earnings that are divisionalized. And then you have your sales for each division combo and whatnot. So you can break it up, however, whatever's appropriate. There's also a feature called GL Rollup. I don't know if that would help, but if you have a pretty big account structure, but sometimes you want to see a simplified income statement, or not income statement, a simplified trial balance, you can assign cost accounts to, you can create a parent-child relationship. So what I could do is say, I've got these three accounts. They're all separate. When you do a journal entry or an entry from sales or AP or wherever, it's going to go into these separate accounts, but maybe I want to see them rolled up so that I can have that little short trial balance versus, the real detailed ones. So roll up is optional, not required. So you can see it's a checkbox. When you check that box, the roll-up tab shows up. Also, in a multi-currency database, you're going to see a currency tab. So each account, you could tell the account which currency it can receive transactions from. So in this one, it's all currencies, but you might say, well, this account might just be for Canada, or this one might just be for Mexico, or something like that. So that's how that works. You do it at the account level. So yeah, question?
It's more like I'm the only one here today, so something kind of pop up, and I might have to leave it in like 7 minutes. I'm so sorry to cut you short.
No, that's all right.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like, you've got a good overview, and I did record the meeting, and I am happy to do the same thing again for other teammates if
oh
needed.
yeah, on Thursday for
Yeah,
sure, and you'll have like actual people like that know accounting and can get into like more questions that I could come up with. I kind of ask
sure.
really, really general ones,
Yep,
just thinking of the conversation I've had with Winona. Um, I know that you didn't show me at all payroll, but I'm okay with it because I will sit down Tuesday as well. So
right.
I know for sure they're
Yeah.
gonna ask about payroll.
Well, since it was just you, my feeling was, just kind of a top level
Yeah,
thing was good. And we can, yeah, I know to pay, the meeting says payroll, but it can be whatever you want it to be. So we
right.
can start it with payroll, and then if
Yes,
there's somebody who doesn't need to know, like if the payroll person could drop off and say, yeah, that's all I need to see or whatever.
right.
Um, yeah, yeah, whatever, I'm very flexible. as far as all
Appreciate
that
it.
goes. Yeah, no worries, no worries. I know you've got a lot of people to kind of juggle. So what I'll do is I will send you this recording. As soon as I get it saved on my system, I'll send you a link to download it.
Okay.
And then your people can watch it or whatever. I might actually put it up on YouTube since it was at kind of top level,
Yeah.
and it's just using sample data. It's not using anything confidential. So yeah,
Okay.
so that I might just go ahead and do that. So anyway, yeah, so I'll look forward to chatting with you. If you think of any questions, email me, even if it's over the weekend. I don't care,
Okay.
I'm sure
Will
maybe
do.
you don't want to do that, but anyway, yeah, just let me know, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Sorry again. I do appreciate it.
No worries, no worries. All right, so I will get that out and we'll go from there.
I will be in touch on Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Perfect. Have a great weekend.
You as well.
Yep, bye bye.
Bye.